Hello and welcome to School Health Presents Talkin Tech with Dr. Ray. I'm Dr. Ray Hype, and in this episode, we're going to be focusing in on some alternative applications for one of my favorite devices, the Time Timer. Now, I know some of you are looking at that right now going, oh my gosh, is this video going to be 15 minutes? The answer is no, it's not going to be. But what's great is that you're able to cue into the fact that there's a passage of time going on. That's why visual timers are so powerful. Many of our individuals don't know how to tell time or don't understand what happens when time is moving linearly. This allows individuals to see a passage, how that works and how it goes from wherever we're at to the ending of that time. It takes away from some of the stress and anxiety that goes on in their lives. Think about even our neurotypical individuals. Let's say they have a test that they're starting at 11 a.m. and finishes at 11:45. 15 minutes in, they happen to glance up at the clock and they see it's 11:15. What's the first thing they do? They don't focus on going back to the test. They focus on, okay, I've got 30 minutes left. What do I need to get done? A third of it's done. And they start pulling away what their focus is, and they can increase their anxiety then as to what's going on. For our students with differing abilities, again, that anxiety is already there. And if they don't understand how to tell time, they don't know when something's going to end, they feel as though they can have their routine pulled away from them, just like they experienced with education in the pandemic. So, what are some of the alternative uses for this? Because right now, what do we basically do? Put one of these in front of an individual or a small group and say, we've got this amount of time to do this activity. And then we put it back on the shelf and don't use it again. Think about this for a minute. I've got it back behind me right now, so you're able to see it with your camera here in this video. You can also create videos for your students, or if you have some students who maybe are sick at home or are in a hospital because they're undergoing a procedure, you can still communicate with them and still give them a cue as to how much time is going on during this particular segment or your discussion as things are happening. And so what's happening is even though they can't have a physical time timer there with them, you're providing it for them. You can see it perhaps in the video screen as you're going on, or you can have some alternatives too. So for me, that's a nice 60-minute time timer. I also have a 20-minute time timer that I use every single day. What do I use it for? I use it as a reminder of when to take sensory breaks, even though the sensory break may be just standing up, shaking it off a little bit, going and getting a glass of water. I go in 20-minute increments. And I don't necessarily always have to look at the visual cue. I can pick up the auditory cue too, which is something to consider when you're in a classroom. Maybe as you're presenting things to students, you've got this set for 20 minutes. And at 20 minutes, the auditory sound goes off. And you know that that is a point in time to make a transition. And it's a simple transition just to a sensory. All right, everybody, let's stand up, shake it off, let's sit back down. And you get everybody's attention and focus back. Also, in looking at this idea of visual timers, I've been working with some groups for physical education inclusively and adaptive PE. And one of the things that people were concerned about was using that scoreboard timer, because at the end of the timer, first of all, it's probably on a countdown, and you have either a horn or a loud buzzer that goes off. And for some of our individuals, that can be overwhelming. So, one of the suggestions is again to stay within the time timer family and use something like the Time Timer Max. I've got this one set right now to be 1 hour in length. You can adjust the time limits for it. But what's great is, again, your students in that gymnasium or in that larger classroom can still see the passage of time, along with having a time timer like beeping going off, not necessarily being so loud that it creates an escalation. Some of our students that are adverse to those loud auditory feedback times. So those are a couple of different ways to take your time timers and use them not just simply for an activity where you set it in front of the students, but have it as cues. Don't be afraid to use the auditory as part of that cueing that goes into. The time timer and visual timers are just such a powerful tool for all of our students, especially now as we head into this academic year where our students are feeling a lot of anxiety and a lot of pressure. Anything we can do to take that pressure off of them and ourselves is going to be helpful. As always, if you have questions, feel free to reach out to me at rhype@schoolhealth.com. I look forward to continuing to work with some of you virtually and hopefully seeing some of you down the road